academic ceremony in which Niloufar Yousefimanesh will defend the academic thesis on the existence and characterization of pure strategy equilibrium in price-quantity games. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis, Ms. Yousefimanesh.
Thank you, Prorector. Dear Prorector, dear members of Corona, dear family, friends, and colleagues, thank you all for being here. In the next 15 minutes, I will give a brief summary of my PhD dissertation. Imagine there are two bakeries. Every morning that they wake up, they decide how many breads to produce and at which price to sell. So they both decide to sell 6 breads for 4 euros. There are some people on the way that they want to buy these breads at a given price. So they both get 4 customers each. And they sell 4 breads for the price of 4, and that gives each of them a payoff of 16 if we don't consider the cost. Then one of them can decide to reduce his price a little bit in order to attract more customers. So he goes from 4 to 3 euros to get a better profit. At this price, there are 6 people that they are willing to buy this bread. So the profit for this firm is going to be 18, and the other firm gets 8. But then the other bakery also has the incentive to decrease its price a little bit to get more customers and get a better profit. So he raises his price, decreases his price to 2, and he attracts some customers. And his profit goes to 10. And now, at this price, then the bakery on the left thinks that, okay, well, I know that my rival has a limit in production. So if I hike my price a little bit, then even if I lose some customers, I would still sell and I will have some profit. So then he hikes his price back to 5 euros, and then he gains a profit of 10. Well, what happens now is the other bakery also thinks the same thing. So he thinks that, well, there is a limit in production of the bread. So if I hike my price also maybe a little bit cheaper than the other one, I would make a better profit. So what happens here is that they both started at 4 euros, but then they got themselves into a price war. They cut each other's prices and get it into a very cheap price. And after that, they had the incentive to hike their prices back again. So that goes again to where they started, even higher prices. So none of these prices are actually stable. They never settle down. And that prevents the market from a stable outcome. But the question is now then, how do these bakers decide how much to produce? So this is the main theme of my PhD thesis. We are looking for the existence and properties of a solution when there are firms that's competing on both prices and quantities in different settings. We do that in 3 different chapters. In chapter 2, we look at a Stackelberg game, where there is a leader and a follower in the game, and they play in a sequential game. In chapter 3, we try to see that if we can actually restore this stable outcome in the market by having an alternative look at a sunk cost definition. At chapter 4, well, firms will still compete on both prices and quantities, but now their strategy is slightly different, what we call price-quantity plans. Chapter 2 is about a Stackelberg game. So imagine there is this leader in the game. This game consists of 4 stages. At the first stage, the first firm, the leader, chooses to produce 3 breads and sell each for 4 euros. At stage 2, the second bakery sees that and chooses its own production level and price. At stage 3, there are people that they are willing to buy this bread at a set price at each of these firms. But what happens now is that, well, the bakery at the left, the leader produces only 3 breads, whereas there are 5 people there that you're willing to buy the bread. So there are 2 of them that they wouldn't be served there. What can happen to these 2 people is that, well, they can decide both to go home, or one of them goes home and the other one goes to the other bakery, hopes that she can still get some bread there, or both of them can go to the other firm. So that helps us to define our demand. Here in our model, here we define the demand, which consists of two different demands, the direct one and indirect one. The direct one is these people that they're colored in black, that they initially prefer to go to these bakeries, but the red ones are the ones that are rationed out from the first bakery, and they would spill over to the follower. And that only works in one direction in our model. So there's only spillover in the second firm. So only the second bakery gets the indirect demand. And the question here is that, is there a solution to this game? Well, we answered that question in our thesis, and it's yes. But maybe more importantly, what does the solution look like? Well, we show that in all of these solutions, there's always the shortage at the leader side. So the leader always decides intentionally not to serve all of the customers. And the next question would be then, who is better off in this setting? We show that that depends on two factors. Firstly, if the products are close substitute, and secondly, if it depends on the degree of a spillover. We show that if the people that they ration out, they are not served at the first firm, if quite a lot of them, a good proportion of them, still goes to the second firm, and if the products or the breads are not completely identical, then the leader would actually get a better profit than the follower. In chapter 3, we look at the sunk cost paradox. So consider this little boy named Brainy. He's hungry and he wants to buy one bread. He lives in a neighborhood that there are 100 bakeries living there. If the prices are the same, Brainy has a preference for the closest one. So he goes to the first bakery. Unfortunately, they don't have any bread for him. Well, he goes to the second one, but there as well, there's no bread left. But he doesn't lose hope, and he goes to the fourth one, third one, and eventually he walks to all of these firms and to the 100th one, and he doesn't get the bread at any of them. So one may think that Brainy is irrational. He should have stopped somewhere on the way. But the thing is that he didn't do anything wrong. Actually, he's behaving exactly according to classical economic models, what the textbook tells you to do. So as long as he went to the first bakery and he wasn't served there, he shouldn't be stuck with that choice. He should go for the second best option, which is visiting the next bakery. And for the exact same reason, when he's at the bakery 99, he must go to the next one. So this is based on an implicit assumption here. All the efforts that he made to go to one of these bakeries is considered to be sunk. It has two parts in it. It means that the first part is that the past effort cannot be recovered. And secondly, the past effort doesn't affect any future decision making. Let's take it into our model. In our model, we consider a street which has with two bakeries standing in the end points of this street. And there is Brainy living in the middle of this street. So he goes to one of the bakeries, learns about the quantity, he's not served there, he goes back to his initial location, and he walks to the other one with the same utility. But that, we find it a little bit weird in our model. We think that the first time that he walked to one bakery and he wasn't served, when he's back, he's tired. Maybe he decides to stay home. Maybe he doesn't want to go to the other one anymore. So if we take it back to the assumption, we do agree that the past effort cannot be recovered. Well, Brainy has walked, and we cannot undo that. But we think that this past effort will still have an effect on the future decision-making, because once he wasn't served, and everyone who are actually located in the middle of this interval, once they are not served at one of them, and then they're back to their initial location, then they wouldn't go to the next one with the same utility. Then their cost function would change. And that will eventually help us to restore the equilibrium. So we can show that there is a solution to this game, and we use a cost function here to capture the effect that, well, the efforts that has been done in the past still will have an effect on the future decision making. And in chapter 4, we look at the price quantity plans. So imagine the same bakeries, but now this time, instead of a fixed price and quantity per, they would tell you that if you buy one bread, then you have to pay 3 euros. If you buy 2 breads, then you need to pay 2 euros per each. And the other one tells you that if you buy 1 bread, you have to pay 2 euros. And if you buy 2 breads, you have to pay 1.5 for each of them. So take Brainy again. He wants to buy 3 breads. What would be the best combination of buying this bread from the firms? Because, well, he wants to minimize his cost. He can buy all of them from firm, the bakery on the right. That costs him 3 euros. He can buy all of them from the bakery on the left, and that will cost him 5 euros, or he can do a combination. Here, it's easy to see that it's always better to buy from the bakery on the right because he's cheaper. But this is not the only combination that these firms can come up with. They're actually, in reality, they can come up with any sort of combination of these price quantities, and that makes this calculation a little bit more difficult. And just imagine that they come with a little bit more complicated menus, then already buying 5 bread would be a little bit challenging. So in that model, we look at the situation that the firm's strategic decision is going to be prices as functions of quantities. And we have 2 applications. The first one is that there is one representative customer who wants to minimize his cost. And the second one is when the demand is actually given as a function, an external function. And the question now is that, well, despite from the other chapters that we were looking for the existence of the equilibrium, here the equilibrium exists. But then the more important question is that actually if we can find a unique one, because here multiple solutions exist. And yes, so we answered that question, that even though they are not exactly unique, but we can come up with some situation that they look like the price-only competition. Thank you very much for your attention. I will give the floor back to the prorector.
Yes, well, thank you for your presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Dr. Kirsten Rode, Professor of Microeconomics here at Maastricht University. And may I give you the word?
Yeah. Yes. Well, dear candidate, dear Niloufar, I would like to start by congratulating you on a very interesting piece of work. I read it with much pleasure. My question is on chapter 3. So, as you also showed in your clear presentation, you assume that if a consumer is not served at one firm, they will first return home, and then they will choose between the remaining options. And I was actually wondering, do you need this assumption that they first return home, or could they directly go to the other firm? And yeah, how does this impact your results in that chapter? That's the first part of my question on chapter 3.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your interesting question. So, in that chapter, what we do is that we actually take an interval 0 to 1, and we assume that, so it's a spatial model. So we assume that there are firms that are located in the beginning and the end point of that interval. And this consumer is located somewhere on that interval. And so if that person walks to one of this firm, then he has to go back to where it is to go to the other firm.
Okay, yeah, I see. I understand. Hey, but and then you assume, so you move on in that chapter by saying, if this person goes back home, the cost structure changes from a linear to a non-linear one, right? And my understanding is that you refer to this as the sunk cost effect. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
So we do it for nonlinear ones as well, and we do it for a general cost function. We also do it for a linear and a quadratic one. So then the idea is that as long as the consumer walks to his original location, then the next time that he's going to walk, he's going to have a different cost function. So we discuss it if that new cost function can be still linear, because like initially he was like with a linear function that was walking. So that could be as well that again he is going to be walking to the next one using the linear cost function or a convex one. So our actually like the results would work perfectly if the function is highly convex. So then means that it will show that actually like we can like that's not going to be for the firms, it's not going to be beneficial anymore to raise their prices like to a very high level. So they would have a certain interval for which they could actually like play with this raising their prices. So that's in that sense then it wouldn't be any more beneficial for a consumer to, after he already walked once, to walk again. So maybe this is going to be another strategy that here it is, then it's like to stay simply home instead of walking again.
So you don't need that the cost function changes from linear to non-linear. It can also remain linear. Is that okay?
Show that actually holds also for us. As long as the new linear function is very steep, then that also has the property.
Okay, and is that, I mean, what would be the interpretation of that? Or I mean, when I think of a sunk cost effect, it's simply people who don't suffer from the sunk cost effect, they don't take these previous costs into account, and the ones who do suffer from it, they add all the previous sunk costs. So then the cost structure doesn't really change, right? But what do you have in mind there? Or can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, so the idea is that like the effort that they've already done, that is already gone. We agree on that. But then the next time that they want to walk, then the utility changes, because then they would face a new cost function and they wouldn't go with the same utility. So now these people that they are probably in the middle of the interval, after one of the firms raise this price a little bit, then they would face a new utility. So they may think that it's going to be now more beneficial to stay home and not buy anymore. And in that sense, then their strategy set changes. So then instead of walking again, they could simply stay home. So that actually breaks this incentive of the firms to constantly raise their prices, and that actually breaks down this like the cycle that I explained in the beginning, because then they cannot just raise and then the consumer would not spill over to any of these firms after that. And in that sense, so the sunk cost is that, well, yes, well, what is gone is gone. It cannot be recovered, but the next time that these people they would walk, they would have a new cost function. So then, in that sense, and how do we show that situation in a model? It's going to be that, well, we simply check for the utility where the utility of the consumer would be zero by walking to any firm. So then it would stay home. They wouldn't walk anymore. And as long as there's still, as long as this new cost function it has some characteristic, if it is convex, for example, then they would still get a better profit, even though they ration out, but they still would get a better profit, like a positive profit, by walking and not just simply going home.
And is there, I mean, maybe not, I don't know, but is there already some literature that shows that this is a realistic assumption, that the cost function might change due to sunk cost bias, for instance, or is that something that needs to be empirically verified, something for future work?
I think, at least from what I know, I think it's just that was, this is a little bit new to look at it like this, that, well, what is sunk, it's not actually like the sunk cost would have an effect in a way that that will change the utility after that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, opposition will be continued by Professor Attila Tasnadi. He's a full professor of economics at Corvinus University in Budapest, I heard. And what I forgot to mention is that these people are very important because Professor Rode is the chair of your assessment committee, and Professor Tasnadi is a member of your assessment committee. So I give the word to Professor Tasnadi, who can be seen on the screen for you and for the audience also on the big screen. That's a very nice question.
Depends. And I want to congratulate Niloufar to her thesis and also to the presentation in which she could quickly go through all the results which were far more demanding and complicated, and it was still understandable what was going on in a very short time. And so my first question is basically related to Chapter 2, strategic rationing. Especially, I like the way how you handle the separation of demand between the direct effect and spillover demand. But I was a little bit wondering about the part that when we have the standard setting, that in case of efficient rationing, the consumers with the high reservation prices are served first. In case of the proportional, it's random. And in case of the spillover demand, I was just wondering whether you thought about, you could somehow model explicitly how, in fact, the consumers are served by the firms approached first, and whether there is a kind of mechanism that could be designed, for instance, like an auction by the low price firm auctioning the quantity, and whether you thought about this and whether you found something like this in the literature. So this would be, I really like your approach, but this is, how should I say, strategic rationing, the wording, the terminology made me think about whether there's something more behind it, in the sense that it could be analyzed from the point of mechanism design or something like that.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your kind words and the question. So in this chapter, what we do is that we actually we have these two firms, and then only the second one is actually getting the indirect demand. And so the way that we try to break down that, break down the cycle is that as long as there is still, as long as, let's say, that's for the goods at the, if they are still homogeneous and they're producing the same good, then there would be some people that are rationed out from the first firm and they will spill over to the second firm that will give them the indirect demand. We don't look at it on the, we don't look at it as if there was the other direction as well. So like people that they wouldn't be served at a second firm, they wouldn't ration out to the first one. And are you still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes.
So with the auction, how we can actually have it in the auctions? Like that was your question, if I get it correctly. So can you maybe?
It was just an idea how in fact the low price firm can just sell the available quantity to the consumers. I mean, in your example with the bakery, it's quite clear, but otherwise, if maybe the way how the consumers are served is a little bit more sophisticated, then maybe it can happen that the low price firm simply implements a kind of mechanism in which the firms serves the consumers, and this affects spillover demand. So what is in fact what opportunity does have the low price firm to influence basically spillover demand? So whether this can be modeled or whether this is something which in reality can happen. I mean that the low price firm has somehow the opportunity to influence the spillover demand by the way he serves the consumers at a low price. Is this clear? Or, I mean, it's not really what you addressed in this thesis. It's just what came into my mind when I read this chapter, and especially the titles about strategic rationing. I thought that there's maybe something that can be analyzed in addition. So that was not in this PhD thesis, but in general.
Yeah, so well, we actually, I mean, like we do some comparison which shows that at the equilibrium, which of these firms will have a lower price and higher price, and we also compare it with the, like if they would only compete in like just a price competition, or if it was like we also do that when it is a simultaneous price quantity competition. So we do that, but. So the only way that we look at a spillover is, it doesn't really, it's not like the firm that has a lower price that send away some consumers, or not in that direction. So we only look at the situation that there is this leader who first chooses prices and quantities, and actually in equilibrium. we show that the prices that this leader is charging is going to be higher than the prices that it would charge in like a normal price competition. And we also compare those ones with like those people, like with the leader and follower. We also compare those pricing as well. We show that the prices of charges by the leader is going to be higher than the follower, anyways. But I'm not sure. To be honest, I don't. That is not very clear for me. Like, how would that mechanism work in this setting? Like, with a, like if it was like the lower firm would send away some of them to the other firm. That's I don't know for now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Sorry.
Answer.
Happy with the answer, Professor Tasnari? Are you happy with the answer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, me too. So we can continue the opposition with Dr. Christopher Kops, who's an expert in decision theory.
Dear candidate, dear Niloufar, first of all, let me congratulate you on the very nice thesis and also the presentation. I really enjoyed. Thank you. Reading your thesis, chapter 2, this spillover demand. Looking at the Boyer-Moreau paper, I wanted to ask, can you elaborate on the connection, basically, because they assume that there is this spillover demand, but it might result in actually more, right? In more customers demanding, or the customers demanding more from the other firm. Whereas in your case here, it is that they demand less. So did you try in that setup that you have also that the firms demand more? And would it be basically just replicating the Boyer-Moreau, or would it look different in your setup? So yeah, if you could just elaborate on this. Thank you.
Hi, this is my opponent. Thank you very much for your questions and for your nice words. So indeed, what we do in this chapter is similar to what they've done in their paper. There are still some differences. For example, they actually prove that there's going to be a second mover advantage in their setting. We actually prove that we can have situation under which the first mover is going to get the better profit. And those situation depends on, for example, if like from the ration out customers, if most of them, or a good amount, like a good proportion of them, like a high proportion of them, if they would still be willing to go to the other firm, and if getting out of the market is not one of their strategies, then in that case, the first firm would get a better profit. Also, that also depends a little bit on the level of like if there is any preference from the consumer side for any of these firms. So if the goods are differentiated, like at least a little bit, or it's like if they are not, if they are close substitutes, so that would work in the leader side, because then the leader would have a little bit more power, and then that also helps them to have a better profit. But then we show that if the goods are identical, well, actually that's also in line with what Boyer-Moreau showed, that if the goods are identical, then the second mover advantage is there, which is also, I mean, like if you're there and you first see the choices of the opponent, that gives you more, more space to choose your best option, and then that should help you to get a better profit. But when we found this specific criteria on the which, but still, like even if you start the game, if you are the first player of the game, you can still get a better profit.
And could you justify the assumption? So under what would be an explanation for why sometimes there's more spillover demand and why there's sometimes less?
Like in my chapter, you mean?
Yeah. So for instance, in the example that you had with the baguettes in the beginning, I mean, there might just be some in your case who just go home, right? So if they're not served here, they just go home. Yeah. So on the other side, however, if there are more, so what would...
Yeah, so I mean, like I think that is something that we also actually had a look in the second chapter a little bit, in the third chapter a little bit as well, when this strategy of not going to any of the firms is also like interesting. So then like they could be that some of these consumers that they are rationed out, they wouldn't go to the other firm, and they would just simply stay home. So then if the goods are identical, then like a little bit, so sometimes I think it can happen that I mean, like you don't mind to where to get that thing, but then if you have a certain preference for a brand or something, then it would make sense that you'd rather not to buy anything if you're not served at your favorite store.
Yeah, I agree in that respect. I find, at least I can think of more of an explanation for your case, right, where they just go home, because in the other case it would be I'm not served here, then maybe I go home, but then maybe I bring Kirsten along to the other shop all of a sudden because I wasn't served here. I don't want to go alone or so. That, but yeah, that's not in your model, right? That's in the other one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's your answer, I guess. Okay, also Dr. Kops was a member of the assessment committee. The last person who's going to oppose you is Dr. Stefan ter Stiege, and as I already more or less advertised, he's not a member of your assessment committee, but nevertheless very important.
Yeah, dear candidate, dear Niloufar, first of all, congratulations also from my side on this very nice thesis. It's very nice to see that you, in 3 chapters, attack the very same problem, so you can really make progress on this problem. Now, I have a question about the 4th chapter, where you consider a situation in which several firms offer menus of price-quantity combinations, like, okay, so I would offer this quantity at this price and that quantity at that price, and all firms offer such a menu. And you propose a solution concept for this game. Now, after the firms have proposed their menu, then the demand, which is either exogenous or cost minimization, determines what quantities are actually then purchased from which firm. And then it can happen that depending on the menu or the profile of menus that was offered by the various firms, there is actually not an equilibrium afterwards, so not like a specified combination of prices and quantities from which firm, depending on the menus. Now, to analyze the situation, then you make the assumption that firms can only offer or can only deviate to a menu when, given what the other firms offer, there would exist such an equilibrium in the market. It could therefore happen that, okay, this deviation that I am now considering would be feasible if the other firms offer this, but is not feasible if the other firms are offering that. So my question would be, have you thought about conditions that would guarantee that in this setting there exists always an equilibrium of price-quantity combination? So not the menus, but in the aftermarket, in the actual market, that we always have market clearing prices. Can somehow the model be specified further so as to ensure this?
Hi, Listener, thank you very much for your interesting question and nice words. So in this chapter, our approach is that we have this two-stage solution concept. That indeed, in the first stage, the firms given the other, so the firm come up with their menus, and when all those menus are there from all the firms, then the market clearing prices would be known if they exist. And only if those exist, then we define the profits for each of these firms. And so then after that, then in the next step, we would look for the best ones in a way that they will maximize the profit of each of the firms. and that is where the equilibrium, we define the equilibrium. So then we actually only limit like the profit of the firm. We only define the profit of the firm for those menus for which this market clearing exists. So for the ones that they are not, they don't exist in market clearing, they wouldn't be, well, we skip those because they wouldn't actually be, but we won't see them in the equilibrium. They wouldn't be a part of the best responses. So we don't look at that. If like the menus for them, like for which there wouldn't be any market clearing prices.
But that it is not a profitable deviation for me, one cannot really say, because one would not know actually what profit I would earn with it, given that we cannot pin down the market clearing prices. Could it not be like with cost minimization, if one, maybe make some additional assumptions such that there's a unique minimizer of the costs that we would then have always an equilibrium? I guess one would need some form of continuity of the of my profit in my menu. Yeah.
So what I think is that, at least what we've done, is that we'll be in two different applications. In the first one, we use those market clearing prices to define this demand for each of these firms, and then like the intersection of all those demands, that like each of those each of those pair of prices, they would actually like in the other firms strategic space, they would actually like give a set, and then as long as these sets they will have an intersection, then on that point, which like the market clearing price happens, then at that point, then then the next step would be that these menus will have to actually also like be binded on those intersections, and then after that, for those ones, then we'll find the maximization. So then for that we need these menus. We use the fixed point theorem in the first application. In the second one, we use this cost minimization, like when the consumer minimizes its cost. So for the first one, when there is any sort of menus, I think like the important part is that as long as we can actually have this set being convex and compact, then the fixed point theorem works, so we can find this equilibrium. So I think then the question would have been then if those menus that they are not really like in a way that we define them, if they could have still like build up like a compact and convex set. I think like the compactness would be fine still, but then the convexity is the problem. So if we can actually find some situation in which this convexity of that set holds, then we can go for the next step and find equilibrium.
I see. Is this a problem that has occurred more often in the literature? Are you aware of this, or how it has been dealt with elsewhere?
In the literature, the problem, I think, like the problem is that existence is there, but then there are multiple solutions. So then a lot of approaches are actually trying to come up with ideas in a way to add some sort of uniqueness to the set of answers, either like to put some condition on the demand. Like if the demand is not uncertain, like it's not certain, for example, so then like this mixed strategies are defined over for each, like for each of these, whatever can happen to the shock in the demand. So this is one way of dealing with this, but I think like as far as I know, most of them, they have the problem of like the multiplicity of the equilibrium, not existence.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you also, Dr. Ter Steege. We have a small committee. Fortunately, they have many questions, so we still have some time to do a second round, and we do that in the same order as we did the first round. So I give the word again to Professor Rode.
Thank you. My question now is on chapter 2. So in chapter 2, you model this Stackelberg duopoly where firms choose price and quantity, and firm 1 is the leader and firm 2 is the follower, right? And then you assume that whenever firm 1 faces excess demand, then this demand can spill over to firm 2. Now, can you explain why you do not assume that then if firm 2 faces excess demand, that can then again spill over to firm 1? Why did you make that assumption? Or how does that work? Could you explain that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Well, I think like even with what we've done, so there is only a spillover from the leader to the follower side. It was quite difficult to show the existence of the equilibrium. And well, I did not look at the situation, what would happen if the spillover would have been both-sided. I'm not sure if that would have been easy to calculate the equilibrium, because then what I can think of is that, well, firstly, like the definition of the direct and indirect demand, that would have been also a little bit problematic. Like, how would you then, it's just another extra level of then indirect demand, I think. So we did not look at that, and I don't have the answer now how that would have been applied into this model. But for what we've done is that, well, this actually gives, like, to define the direct demand and the indirect demand in the way that it is now, we actually managed to come up with a solution. So then in this solution, there's always be, so we show that the situation, then the spillover 0 will never happen in the equilibrium. So there would always be, in order to have an equilibrium, it's always need this spillover to be there. Even though the second firm, they can still, they would be indifferent, choosing any options between, in a way that if they would have a spillover or not, that for the second firm is always the case. So then for the second firm wouldn't change. They could choose any strategies to maximize the profit. But then that would only work for the first firm. For the first firm would change in order to have a better profit. So then, the spillover is from the it's coming from the first firm's decision, because the second firm would be indifferent between choosing those strategies. And but that's as I also mentioned, I think. Well, if it is beneficial or not, that also can be said, based on this level of a spillover that is there. But what would happen if there was also another level of a spillover? So then they would go from the other direction, from the second firm to the first firm. We did not look at that, and I think it's very interesting. But I also think that it would be it's complicated. It makes everything a little bit more complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I understood it's complicated. Anyway, also for Professor Tasnadi, there's the opportunity to ask more questions. And again, very interesting.
The mixed strategy equilibrium. And in the beginning of your thesis, you are writing that in price quantity games, there's the difficulty of possibly facing a mixed strategy equilibrium, which is more difficult to analyze. And one question related to your C chapters is basically, how did you avoid to have to deal with mixed strategies, in the sense which assumption or which setting allowed you to stay within the framework of having a pure strategy equilibrium? And maybe an additional question related to that is there a possibility, for instance, when you look at the model of chapter 2, if you somehow make some assumptions on the spillover demand, then you look at the simultaneous move case. Is there a possibility that you still have pure strategy equilibria? So I mean, could there be a kind of assumption on the spillover demand which would still lead to the existence of a pure strategy equilibrium in the simultaneous setting, which usually is linked to the emergence of mixed strategy equilibrium.
Thank you for your question. So the idea, indeed, so then in the entire thesis, we try to actually look for the existence of the pure strategy equilibrium. I mean, so with a mixed strategies, sometimes it can be a little bit, sometimes in some settings it would be easier to find this with the equilibrium in mixed strategies. But if we take like the example from the practical side, I think like with the two bakers, it's usually like every morning they decide how much to produce and how much to sell, and then the prices wouldn't really change each day, and they wouldn't really like go with a like a random like throwing a dice and choosing like how much to produce these days and like the other day. So then it's like to keep the prices a little bit stable. I think like for that reason we are more interested in the pure strategies, at least in all of this in all of these chapters. And it's also gonna be like from the, like if you look at the welfare as well, I think that would also be some reasons that like the payoff, like that, because then also for the consumers, like they would get a expected utility by like the mixed strategies, and that would something also be a little bit, I think, like difficult, at least like in practice. So that's the reason that we only, like we were trying to find the pure strategy equilibrium in all of these three chapters. And for the mixed ones, I mean, like now that's, but like now the pure strategies in this setting, like we've worked with the characterization, we try to actually like limit our like model and add some stuff in order to make sure that this equilibrium exists. But if it was like in a simultaneous game, like price quantity change choices, so well, the equilibrium is like it breaks down. So well, I mean, like even well, we apply the spillover, and there could be some, I don't know, like different approaches to bring back the equilibrium. So then a spillover is one. I think like mixed strategy works in quite a lot of models, like in the literature, there are quite a lot of them that they use that to bring back the equilibrium. Like the having a capacity on the production, or like making sure that like there is not very small firm in the market, so all of the firms, they would still have like more or less the same production level. Those sort of things, like I think that those are the ideas that they apply to bring back the equilibrium. Well, in our model, yeah, well, we tried like to look at the sunk cost in the second one. In the first one, we tried to have the sequential setting and have limited spillover, like limited, like to work with a model in a way that the spillover only works in one direction. And those were the ideas we tried to apply to, like to employ to actually bring back the equilibrium. But with the mixed strategies, I think like at least for the practicality, we didn't look at those. Like we were more interested in the pure strategy.
Thank you very much. I understand your points, and you also addressed my first question entirely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. The next person in line is Dr. Kops, and he also has some interesting questions.
Yeah, so since my first question was about chapter 2, I have another one on chapter 2. So this time it's very specific, I would say. So reading this, I really liked this and this whole spillover demand. But then, of course, I saw this was done before in this Boyer-Moreau paper. But then you have this part on the spillover demand paradox, right? Here you make very specific assumptions, right, on, for instance, the cost that the two firms face. And you assume them to be identical to get to these results then in proposition 2.9 on, and I think the next one as well, so in 2.10. So I just wanted to ask how necessary they are that these costs are identical. So could you just elaborate on, I mean, as is usually the case, when you see these results, you're just interested in, okay, how far could you push it? So it might just be that it was already very hard to find those results. So yeah, just elaborate on what you can.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the question. So what happened in that chapter, I think we started with an example, with a specific example, with a given demand, like the event with so like 20 minus something, like literally like with some numbers, and we saw that like this interesting result happens that like even though you would expect there would be a second mover advantage, but then with these numbers, it's actually working, that it's the profit of this firm is better. So that was also like that was interesting for like to start to build up more on that. And so if the costs wouldn't be the same, I think that would have still that would change the profits obviously, and then I think like the demand for each of the firms would have been different. So how would that then affect? So what was what was the rest of the question? So if the cost was different?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, what if they're not identical, but I mean, just assume them to be as close as you want them to be? Would it still be possible to get to results like these, or is it like completely out of reach?
Well, at least I think, like for what I could see, that it's going to be the demand would have been different for sure, and then how would that then affect, like which of these firms is better off? For that one, I think that would have been really complicated, because that really is depending on very specific characterization of these numbers, and like how even when we have this demand function which shows this how perfect and imperfect substitute these goods are, even like that level, that's a specific like coefficient that would have an effect on this, that the interval that this parameter belongs to, that also has plays an important role in order to see which one is getting a better profit. So then I would think that, like in just talking about which firm would have been better off if if the costs wouldn't be identical, I think that needs a lot of calculation. And how would that then affect? I would probably think that like the cost, like because we also want this cost eventually to be the prices that people are willing to pay must be higher than this cost, right? So that probably also will have an effect on the the existence, if we can actually define this,
So given that you said you started with an example, so you never tried to push it further, like with an example on where the costs are, I don't know, different?
Well, if the costs were different, I think in the general case, we actually do not really, we are taking this the linear cost, and that works for it. But with the example and specifically talking about which one is going to be better off, I think that we just went with the similar cost for both of them.
Okay, that brings us to the last person of the opposition again, Dr. Ter Stiege.
Yeah, I also have a question about costs, again about chapter 4. In the second application that you consider there, you show that equilibria exists, and they are of the Bertrand type, so Bertrand outcomes. You assume in this chapter that the costs of the firms are the same, and then the last sentence of this chapter is that while you do not give a proof, the analysis suggests that with asymmetric costs, we would still have equilibria of the Bertrand type, firms charging different prices. I wanted to ask, can you first elaborate a bit on this? Is it then exactly like the Bertrand, where they just can charge a price, but with different costs? And could there potentially, with different costs, also be different kinds of equilibria that you, which you did not find in the symmetric cost case?
Okay, thank you for your question. So that was chapter 4, right? Yes. So in chapter 4, well, the way that we actually, like the fact that we say that this cost could have been different and then the prices would have been different is that, like, that would give them different demands. So even though in our, in the first part, in the first application, when there were, like, the demand is exogenously given, so we start with finding this market clearing prices, and then after that, given that, and then this cost function, we will use them to find a maximization of each of these firms, right? So then if they would have been different, I would expect them to still, well, I think that we could still find equilibrium. The only problem is that, well, there would have still firms that would have still produced at equilibrium. They would have still, like, the prices would have been the marginal costs. So in that way, they would have the same results as a Bertrand, the price-only competition. And well, anywhere in our calculation, we did not really specifically really use this, except for the fact that we used them for to maximize the profit. That was the only way that we used them. So then they could have been different. And well, as we mentioned there, so then because eventually at the candidates of equilibrium, we showed that those are the exact same ones as the price only. So then it's a marginal cost. So then, like with a CQ, then the price would be simply just C, and that would have happened. But then the C, if they would have been different, then yeah, the prices set would have been different, but it's still equilibrium.
When, so naive intuition, so if one firm has very high costs and there's only two firms, then maybe the situation is almost as if there's just one firm which can then afford, therefore, to be quite uncompetitive. Could it ever be that they offer a proper menu, and not just like then say if one firm has very high costs, then I do just monopoly pricing, but also not a menu. When we are very similar costs, we
Niloufar Yousefimanesh, the time appointed for defending the thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. And I request that you and your company await this result of our deliberations and our return into this room. the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Vermeulen is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with the Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Niloufar, do you promise, I first have to say this, so we'll do the formalities first. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times? To be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Niloufar Yousefimanesh, the degree of doctor, and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university. Turn it so that people can move up. Congratulations. Dr. Yousefimanesh, very dear Niloufar. Here you are now, at this place, in the aula of the university, in front of your parents and your friends and all your colleagues, and at the end of the day and the moment that you knew that one day would come, and that you dreaded would come. But looking back at this moment, I think you've got all the reason to be very, very, very proud of yourself and what you achieved. You did it. You wrote and you successfully defended your PhD thesis, and now you've got the highest academic title there is, that of doctor. And I was very glad that I was the first that congratulate you with this really very beautiful result. The road towards this day, this moment here in the aula, and that's at least in my opinion, fits very well with your character and personality, incredibly well. It was a roller coaster ride, with many twists and turns, and many ups and downs. The roller coaster ride, whose completion we celebrate here today, started on September 1, 2018. You applied for a PhD position that Iwan, so your second promoter, and me had available as part of the GSBE research team competition and cooperation, of which Iwan was at that time the director. And we could get a PhD position. So you applied, and your CV looked very good to us, with a 2-year master in applied mathematics, and you were familiar with topics such as functional analysis, topology, random walks, and non-cooperative game theory. I'm still a bit surprised about the difference between what is apparently in Iran regarded as applied math as compared to the Dutch version that we currently have. But personally, I sympathize with the Iranian view on this, and it could be my personal biased view on this, but I think I like that better than the Dutch version. Anyway, I do not know how well your parents and your family and friends are informed about the ups and downs during this roller coaster ride. But I would like to take the moment and the opportunity to share a few of those ups and downs that occurred along the way. So with you and also with the audience. To start with the ups, Niloufar. The first up I would like to address are your driving skills. Apparently you're the Iranian equivalent of Max Verstappen. or since yesterday, maybe Lando Norris, but okay. As far as I can tell, your driving technique fits perfectly well with your view on PhD projects and life in general in terms of roller coasters. You like lots of speed and also lots of exciting events along the way. With your driving skills and with your need for speed, you managed at least to absolutely terrify both your father and your paranymph Benoit. Although both are very kind and gentle persons as far as I know, you got them to the point where both of them forbade you to ever ride their perspective cars ever again. I think that's quite an achievement. The second roller coaster for me, and where your need for speed is also evident, is the way you talk. You always talk fast. Sometimes insanely fast. As Professor Marini, who you visited in Rome, and Iwan like to say, sometimes it simply cannot be comprehended. Especially when you get stressed or enthusiastic, your speed of speech quadruples. Sometimes I really felt that the only way to keep track of you is simply to record everything you say and then play it back afterwards slowly. The surprising part is that you claim that in Farsi you actually talk even faster. You seem to use that as an argument to convince us that we shouldn't complain too much about it. But I cannot judge your claim because I don't speak Farsi, but I would really, really like to talk to your parents and see how they cope with just that. So I'll try to do that afterwards. Another issue is that you're a continuous source of anecdotes. You once told me a story about the time when you had to take care of the cat of Farzaneh. And you managed to lock yourself, but also the landlord, out of the apartment. So what Niloufar did was she went into the room, she let the key in the keyhole on the inside, and then locked the door behind us while she was walking out. So I'm not sure if you consider this to be an up, but I think it's hilarious, so that you managed to do that. Another thing that is, for example, that was just a small thing, but you also once showed up with your laptop. You had to give practice your presentation for us, and you showed up with a flat laptop without a charger. So we had to send you back again, to get the equipment. You're also the most negative person that I know. Maybe the audience thinks that's not really an up, but I'll explain. So I mean it really very literal in every sense of the word. You treat inequalities in a way that I've never seen anyone else manage to do. A statement like x is bigger or equal to 3, in your language inevitably turns into the statement that minus x should be at most negative 3. It's not untrue, but it's complicated. At least in the eyes of most people. But not to you. So this is just an example, but so you manage to write entire proofs this way, and you very consistently, very carefully keep both sides negative, and you're perfectly happy to do so. So we try to discourage you to do this, but until today you simply do that, and you do not seem to be bothered by it. So we kind of gave up on this battle. It's apparently how you're hardwired. So. I also have very good memories about our dinners with Iwan, with the three of us, in the Tremhalte and Minkelers, where we drank wine, we had a couple of beers, and we discussed the state of our papers, or we talked about new research ideas, or philosophized about life in general. And also as an up, I think I already mentioned it, but I think for you, the 3 months in Rome were also a time where you had, where you enjoyed life very much. Yeah, Niloufar. So I also have to, discuss some of the moments where the journey of the roller coaster went down the hill instead of upwards. And I think one valley in the road, and a major one, was COVID, in your case. Because just when you were about to go, I think it was your first conference, and at least the first presentation that you should give, so Corona hit the world. and you were forced to present your work on the oligo workshop that Iwan was organizing. And you had to present online. And unfortunately, Corona and its aftermath so lasted almost, I think, to the end of your PhD appointment. I think that was not an easy time for you. Not being able to visit your parents and also locked up in a foreign country without too much opportunity to meet with friends and colleagues. We did trespass a little bit on the rules now and then. We had the weekly dinners. So still thank Stan for coming up with this idea. And also, so your partner, Benoit was there, Aditya, Fazane. And I think it really helped a lot to break the isolation a little bit. And I really, really enjoyed those meetings a lot. This is perhaps also a good moment to discuss your cooking skills. But yeah, so I'm already taking a lot of time, so I will not upset and shock the audience too much. So I'll leave it at just saying that Niloufar does not like cooking. Another major bump in the road was that you started to struggle. So this is a serious one, I think, that you started to struggle a lot after your PhD had ended. You started as a teacher, first at the foundation program and later at the Department of Advanced Computing Sciences at DAX. And you started to have to teach a lot. And you found out, I think, the hard way that, it wasn't really not easy to continue doing research and writing papers while you're having a full-time job next to it. And there was also a time when you faced a lot of uncertainty because for a long time you did not know whether you could stay or whether your appointment would be terminated. I think it's fair to say that there were moments when you really doubted that this day would ever happen. But about a year ago, I think we had lots of discussions with the three of us, and I think eventually we could convince you, at least that's how I see it, to make an effort to complete the last stage, and which that was mainly finalizing the third chapter. You started to compose yourself again, and you found the energy, I think, to complete the third paper. And that brings me back to today, at the end of this roller coaster ride with you. I think, Niloufar, and I'll say it again, that you can be very, very proud of what you achieved. I can say for myself that I am at least very, very proud of what you achieved today. And I'm sure that your parents feel exactly the same way about it. It was certainly not always easy, but I think, especially in the last few months, you showed focus and strength and stamina. And the result is that you have a beautiful thesis, of which some of the chapters are already published. And, this got you your new gained title. And I think you got all the future ahead of you. So, let me close this speech by congratulating you again, Niloufar, and your father and your mother, who are also present here, and your family with this beautiful result. I would like to say a big thanks also to Iwan for joining on this roller coaster ride, for joining the supervision team and also investing a lot of time on the papers and the discussions. And I also wish to extend a big thank to the members of the Maastricht Committee, so Kirsten and Attila, who is online, and Chris and Stefan, for their efforts in bringing and helping Niloufar to the next level. Niloufar, this brings us to the end here in the aula. It was a privilege to be your supervisor, and I wish you really, really, really all the best in the future. Young Dr. Niloufar Yousefimanesh. Ik heb gezegd.
Thank you for your 16 minutes of talking to the young doctor. Dear Dr. Yousefimanesh, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I congratulate you with the degree that you have acquired. Before I end this ceremony, there are a few things that I would like to discuss with you. The audience can already move to the rafter where we have a reception. We stay here for a few more minutes in which you can say a few words to Professor Tasnadi. And then we're going to make pictures with Professor Tasnadi all around him and he being on the screen. After that, we move to the hallway where we are going to take pictures, all of us, and that means the committee, all people present on this side of these tables, and you, and your parents, I guess, but the beadle can correct me if that's not the idea or not. And your family can also take some pictures there. And then we also move to the rafter where everybody can congratulate you. Okay, I close the meeting.
I put it here now. Yeah. You can, when you are leaving, with you. Okay.
Close it.